Follow your heart, but take your brain with you. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the effects of brain drain. You can also join in the conversation. The number to send your WhatsApp messages is 076 656 5353. The number once again 076 656 5353. Joining us this evening on the show are Dr. Bilesha Veeratna, Head of Migration and Urbanization Research, IPS, Dr. Athulasiri Samarkon, Secretary of the Federation of University Teachers Association, Dr. Thenuwan Wickramasinghe, General Committee Member of the Government Medical Officers Association, as well as Dhanushka Fernando, award-winning entrepreneur. Joining me to pose questions to the panelists this evening, onto my immediate left is Disal Kapuri. Welcome back, Disal, after a long time.
Thanks, Shawi.
So we're looking forward to grilling the panelists today with regard to our topic tonight, the effects of brain drain. So let's get the ball rolling today with Dr. Athulasiri Samarkon, Secretary of the Federation of University Teachers Association. Dr. Athulasiri, what are your thoughts on our topic tonight, the effects of brain drain?
Yeah, thank you, Zamir, for this invitation. And I think the topic is very timely because at the moment the country is acutely facing the consequences of brain drain. Will now, for any country, there can be pros and cons of brain drain, particularly when it comes to understanding the various dimensions of migration, international migrations. Now, but this particular issue for Sri Lanka is because now the country has been declared a bankrupt country, and within that context we have to look at this issue. Now, brain drain is a not issue, it's not a new phenomenon, but it has been something which has been in a way accepted by the system now. For instance, now in 80s when we had the ethnic riots, so ethnic clashes, very violent clashes among Sinhala Tamil communities, so there was naturally the brain drain, but there was not much discussion about that. So many people migrated and they settled in various other countries and they became diaspora. So today we call them diaspora and they may be sending us remittances. But right now what we are facing is another side of the issue. Now our professionals are migrating in a larger scale. So for the last couple of months or maybe within the last 2 years, a sizable proportion of the this skilled population, skilled labor or professional people, those who are specialists, those who are trained in various professions, so they are leaving the country and they may not return also because they may be permanently migrating. And this is because of the bankruptcy. Maybe that may be the first factor which may cause immigration in a larger scale. But on the other hand, we have to look at other factors. What actually make these people leave the country? Because leaving the country means that you don't have any affection towards the country in the first place, because maybe we had this slogan that I remember during the last presidential campaign, one of the candidates wanted to make this country inna hitana rata, right? A country where we would love to reside, right? So, but right now, people don't love to be here, and people more and more are searching opportunities to leave the country. So this is not only about professionals or skilled labor or semi-skilled, but maybe most of the young generations, right, young people, youth of this country are searching avenues to leave the country. So look at the number of applications for obtaining passports, etc. So the statistics show very clearly that that is increasing. So there is an unmanageable amount of requests to obtain passports, and that means that there's a huge population which expect to leave the country. So why people want to leave the country at this juncture? It is due to several reasons. I think first of all we have to look at the conditions which may force them to leave, and on the other hand political, social and economic factors which have affected migration largely.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Atul Samarkon, Secretary of the Federation of University Teachers Association. I now move my attention towards Dr. Bilesha Guiratna, Head of Migration and Urbanization Research at IPS. What are your thoughts on our topic tonight?
Hi, Shamil. So brain drain is the topic today, but I just want to start by going back a step. It's about migration. So migration is not a new thing to Sri Lanka. As we know, for decades people have been going, and there has been people going out, there has been people coming back as returnees, and there has been circular migration, people coming and going and coming and going, doing repeated trips. So when there are temporary migrants, there is also this return phenomenon. So brain drain is just one aspect of migration, and along with migration, the whole gamut of it, we get remittances, which has been very helpful in the country's economy in recent past. At the same time, brain drain has become a concern during the ongoing situation in the country. Why? Because right now we are facing a couple of sectors with labor shortages. So as my fellow panelists mentioned, it's important to understand why people want to leave, but also we need to understand how to manage migration in a way that it is not detrimental to the Sri Lankan economy to have an outflow, but to manage it in a knowledgeable way so that we can understand what sort of a labor pool is needed for the economic situation of the country, especially for the recovery of the Sri Lankan economy out of this ongoing crisis. And if we can balance what is needed in the domestic economy versus what we can send out and make a benefit out of remittances and the full works of migration, I think that is a more mature way of looking at it, because maybe we can discuss later. Even though there is brain drain, as we see, there are other aspects also attached to it. There's brain gain or brain circulation, so many other things are there. So brain drain is not the only thing that is going on right now, but it is a concern. It is a concern. I do accept that. Right. But there are ways to manage it.
Dr. Bilesha, if you look at the numbers beginning July 2022, there is a stark increase in the number of worker remittances. And I recollect on this very show a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about this subject, and a spokesperson from the Ministry of Foreign Employment Bureau spoke about the need for individuals to migrate and travel overseas, and they saw this as a plus point. But if you look at the domestic scenario, there seems to be the cream leaving out of the country, and we are left with the dirt, the latter stages, you know. That's the notion that even the private sector has in mind right now. The cream of the society has now left the country. So you spoke about how important it is to manage the domestic economy as well. In your opinion, how do you view such a statement, especially when the Foreign Employment Bureau says people have to leave and send money to the country? Is that happening?
Now, people leaving and sending money to the country is happening. That is one of the primary motives of migration, to send remittances. But then I respectfully disagree with you on the statement that the cream leaves. Okay, people decide to leave. Some of them might be the best of the best. But I think it's time we should change the narrative. This is not only my idea. At a panel discussion that I was a couple of months ago, somebody else stressed this very much, that we need to change the narrative, that it is not the cream that has gone and the not so good people are left behind. We should change the narrative. There is a bunch of good people also left behind, because otherwise it had as a herd effect. If everybody is left, I also should leave, and there is no real need for that person to go, but for the herd effect that will happen. So we need to change the narrative and show if you have a necessary need to go, it's okay to go, but then just go, don't go because everybody else is going. That is one part of it. And then management, as you asked, there are ways to manage it so that it can, the damage can be minimized, or the demerits can be minimized to the economy, and we can maximize the benefit.
Well, let's talk about the healthcare sector in Sri Lanka. Right now, there is a lot of controversy behind the healthcare workers. Most of them, accounting to 125 consultants, have left the country already by last year, and out of which 700 doctors have immigrated already. Don't you think that this is putting a strain on the domestic economy as well?
Definitely it is. It is putting a strain on the domestic economy. Before that, it is putting a heavy strain on the doctors left behind, because now they have to pull a heavier load and there's more expectation on them, I'm sure.
Right.
And their comparison is now overseas, and they also are tempted to go away. So it is putting a strain on many levels, at an individual level, at a macroeconomic level also. So the policy focus to address this has to come from many levels also too. First, to address the micro level issues, the individual issues, as this gentleman said. Why do they leave? We have to address that. If they cannot meet the ends, if the cost of living is too high and their income is not enough, those things have to be addressed if we want to retain them. And then also, from a broader point of view, we have to understand that we cannot retain everybody. There might be people who really want to go. So there has to be a systematic way of identifying who can be released to go and who has to stay back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bilesha Viradha, Head of Migration and Urbanization Research at IPS. I now move attention towards Dr. Thinuwan Wickramasinghe, a General Committee Member of the Government Medical Officers Association. What are your thoughts, Dr. Thinuwan?
Hi Shamil, good evening, and thank you for inviting GFI for this valuable discussion. First of all, starting, the health is one of the most identical thing in Sri Lanka. If you look at internationally, the health indicators are in par with the European countries and the developed countries. That is one main aspect that we are high above there. So one main reason for these high health indicators is the human resource that we are having in the country. Despite having all these political problems and the 30 years or long war and all, we could retain doctors in Sri Lanka, not only in Sri Lanka but in the government sector also. So we were able to provide same healthcare facility that was available in Colombo in all the peripheral settings. That is for the last many years, although there was this war and all. But unfortunately, what has happened is, one more thing that I want to tell is that to maintain the same health indicators as Sri Lanka, the United States is spending about 11,700 USD per capita health budget, and Australia is spending about 5,900 USDs. But Sri Lanka is maintaining the same health indicators, almost equal same indicators, by spending only 151 USDs per health budget. So that means we are having a good human resource that we have been equitably distributed throughout the country, and they are providing the same service as capital. So unfortunately, what has happened is, due to multifactorial reasons that has emerged during last few maybe months and years, number of skilled professionals has gone abroad. So the loss of doctors to other countries, especially to the European countries and the Middle East, has come to a place that our healthcare system is about to be collapsed.
Dr. Thinuwan, I just want to also direct your attention towards the decision that was reached by the Ministry of Health today, stating that they will refrain from approving leave for doctors in areas with a limited number of specialists to travel overseas. How do you view this statement from the Ministry of Health?
Shamil, it is like, for a problem there are solutions in different levels. If you take the last step at first, the things will not get resolved. And the thing that I want to tell you is that, you told few numbers in the previous discussion, there are about 300 specialists that have already left the country, not only 125. And up to today, about 900 doctors has left the country. So even the ministry is trying to keep them by force,
Right.
by applying laws. What they can do maximally, the maximum thing that they can do is they can remove them from the ministry service. But will that have an impact on this problem? The number of people who leave the country, they are going for a huge salary.
Will the medical council license be revoked as well?
If you know the rules, if you know the governing body, the medical ordinance is the governing structure for the medical council. So even though people left the country even without informing the government, even they go on vacation of post, there is no provision that medical council registration can be waived.
All right. So I want to get a little bit of clarity on this, Dr. Tenuwan. Let's talk about higher salaries. Now you spoke about that a couple of seconds ago. Let's get some clarity on that. How much would a doctor in the Sri Lankan health care service in the government sector earn a month?
There are three main categories in health sector of Sri Lanka. There are medical officers, there are specialists, there are administrative grade medical officers. All three categories are working in part. So if you talk about the grade medical officers who are working throughout the country, there are three grades: preliminary grade, grade 2 and grade 1. So if you take average, it's about take home basic salary is about 58,000. 58,000 rupees, the basic salary.
So with allowances and
So
all that,
if you tally all the allowances, it will come to around 200,000 maximum.
Right. How much would a doctor qualified in Sri Lanka, a medical officer, earn overseas?
If you compare with the European countries, there are many attractive countries like Australia, Canada, US, UK, and also now people are migrating to the Middle East. So if you roughly talk about the UK, they are paying about 3 million per month for a medical
3 million
officer.
a month.
Yeah, that where the total take home salary before taxes. So they earn about 3 million per month. So if you compare the 200,000 here and the 3 million there, what we have to think is what are the factors that people will be retaining here? Is there anything that people should stay here? There may be family commitments and other things that they want to that they have reasons to stay here.
Right.
But even though there are reasons, this huge discrepancy between salaries and the working environment that they have to work, the conducive environment that you are having overseas, and the facilities that you are getting there, and the quality of life that you and your family will get there, it is a huge problem.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tenuwan. We of course will talk about all this momentarily as the show goes along. I now move attention towards Dhanushka Fernando, an entrepreneur. What are your thoughts, Dhanushka, on our subject tonight?
Good evening, and thank you, Shamil, for inviting me. Yes, I would like to shed some light in terms of both entrepreneurship and business environment in Sri Lanka. If you go by the stats, 52% of our GDP is contributed by the SMEs, and also about 45% of employment opportunities are generated by SMEs. So they have a significant contribution towards our economy. But unfortunately, Shamil, as I've spoken at different forums, if you take the percentage of entrepreneurs, it only accounts to 1.5% of our entire population. So this problem has been there for some time. This is not something that's, has boiled up recently. The fact that a lot of people in Sri Lanka are not willing to take a risk due to several factors. So we need to, really drill down and go to the problem itself. One is the education. One is the fact that they don't have access to markets. They don't have enough opportunities to, build something on their own. And this has also contributed in the recent times with the economic crisis, where a lot of entrepreneurs have really suffered. People who have been importing and then selling locally have suffered. People who had hopes and dreams of starting their own businesses have gone away from the country. A lot of professionals have left the country. Last year itself, I think about 12,000 odd professionals have left the country. So human capital and retaining human capital has been a big problem for businesses and entrepreneurs alike. So this is having a major impact towards the economy, because I believe entrepreneurs have a big role in
Right.
uplifting an economy,
Right.
and also contributing towards the livelihoods, generating jobs. And see, if you really drill down to the problem, it boils down to the lack of proper leadership in the country and the political instability. when I talk to fellow entrepreneurs, business people, so that's the number one thing that they say. They don't see stability in the country, and we rank at 99 position when it comes to ease of doing business. So there are a lot of factors that I can go on talking, Shamil, on that.
So Danushka, what begs an answer is the brain drain in Sri Lanka was very significant after the Aragale last year. Why is that?
See, if you take Aragale, what are the aspirations of a youth who's graduating? So they want to have a better life, especially people who are coming from the free education system. If you ask them what do they want to be in life, they want to have a job, they want to have a proper income, they want to build a house, they want to buy a car. So there were a lot of aspirations that the youth had. And with Taragalaya, people thought that things would change. And we thought that we could hold the politicians accountable. But we don't see that accountability, politicians taking up that accountability. And then we don't see light at the end of the tunnel, especially youth. They don't see, things getting better. So without hope, a nation without hope is like a ship that's, lost in the dark, right? You can't really see what's going to happen. So a lot of the time, these youngsters, when we speak, we also find it very difficult to retain them in organizations. What they do is they come, they work for 6 months, and they want to, go abroad. So whatever we invest for these kids, it's lost at the end of the day as well.
Right.
Not seeing hope at the end of the tunnel, right? Not seeing that, their aspirations can be fulfilled by living in Sri Lanka is one of the main causes for them to leave.
Very quickly, if you look at countries like the UK, where the cost of living has significantly gone up, if you look at countries like Canada, where the cost of living has gone up and finding a job is very, very difficult for a student, and trying to migrate to a country like Australia is very difficult as well. So everything is not hunky-dory when you leave Sri Lanka, is it?
Absolutely. What you say is completely right, especially UK. I mean, it's going through a really tough time, and people who have gone there, what they show on social media is not the real life, unfortunately. But a lot of people fall trap to what's been publicized on social media. We've seen like a big inflow of social media that's kind of, like it's made up. Certain things are made up that's prompting people to take decisions without thinking twice. It's like a herd defect, as the doctor says. So it's like a herd defect. Especially youth can be easily, motivated to, take certain options that they don't want to take. But at the same time, Shamil, even though conditions are hard, what they believe is you work hard for 5 years and then you can really, build something for yourself. That's what they've seen. They are willing to do that, and these kids, especially graduates, they are willing to work hard, and they are, willing to commit their time and resources.
Very quickly, Danushka, do you think people are leaving Sri Lanka because of the tax hikes that was introduced? Is that a contributory factor?
Well, for a certain segment, yes. If you take now, you have to look at different segments, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50 different brackets. Professionals, obviously, there's an impact for them. I mean, 30, 40% if it's been taxed, and if you're not getting the benefits, if public service is not really, as per the standards where you get in other countries, obviously there is much reasons for them to leave. Because even if you go to Australia, I mean, half of your salary, most European countries, it's taxed. But still people are willing to pay that, and it's monitored, and they get the benefit back.
Right. Thank you very much, Danushka Fernando, award-winning entrepreneur. I'm only flanked with you, Disal, unfortunately, today. So I have no other option but to look at you to start asking the questions from our panelists. So over to you.
Yes, thank you, Shamir. Dr. Bilesha, I'd like to start now. You said it's not, we are just focusing on one part of the problem, the brain drain problem. But in terms of the brain gain you talked about how people would go abroad, acquire skills and return to the country, what are the tendencies that we are observing right now? Is it a positive one or a negative one? Like, what are the trends as of now?
Now, it's like this. So brain gain is people being motivated to acquire higher educational skills with the aspiration to go overseas. So there will be a whole lot of people wanting to get an NVQ certification, because that will give you a higher possibility.
So it's more like what you would acquire here to go abroad, not from abroad to here.
There are many aspects. So brain gain is what we will acquire here with the aspiration of going abroad.
Right.
But then what happens is not everybody gets to go abroad, no? So some of these people who have acquired these greater skills will retain in the country and they can contribute positively to the economy. So that is the brain gain part of it, because even though they were motivated by the objective of going abroad, still they might retain and contribute to the Sri Lankan economy.
What about the instance of them returning
Yes.
after acquiring skills?
So that's exactly, that is sort of, we call it brain circulation. They go overseas, they acquire some skills from there and come back. But what we have seen recently with our research on return and reintegration is that many of the people who acquire these skills overseas find it very difficult to put it into use in Sri Lanka, because sometimes that sort of jobs are not available here. And then, as it was mentioned, the salary expectations are very difficult to be matched, because they have been having that skill and earning some income over there. When they come here, they expect a similar comparable wage, which is not offered. Then they get discouraged, and then they might decide to go overseas again. So that is some of the things that's going on. I just want to tell on this brain gain a nice example. Now we know there's a whole lot of people wanting to go to Korea. To go to Korea, you have to pass the Korean language, that TOPIK exam. There's a whole lot of people doing it, but there's only a specific number of slots given. So we know that many people have acquired the skill at least to pass the exam. I don't know whether they're conversant really or not. But that is a good example that we know we have a good stock of people who can speak the Korean language because of this exam, and only a few would go. So maybe we should look at how to make use of that language skill that they've acquired over in Sri Lanka without just getting it to go waste. So what is happening is some of these skills that they have acquired with the intention of going abroad is not properly utilized in Sri Lanka. And similarly, some of the people who are coming with better skills are also not properly utilized. So that is a loss. Actually, we should find ways to how to really make the full potential of it, maybe monetize it in some way, because right now that's what we need, not to just lose that.
On that point, Dr. Atulasiri, I'd like to ask you now, Dr. Bileka talked about how brain circulation could bring in new skills to the country, new areas of expertise. Now, you being a person in the academic field, it's a huge, I mean, it's almost a normal thing where most of our academics go abroad for their PhDs, for their masters, and most of them return. But there is obviously the question of if the area of expertise is being put to good use within our country. So do you think the government should actually focus on that rather than controlling people going abroad, rather making an environment conducive for them to return to the country and use their area of expertise and skills that they gain from abroad?
Yeah, of course. I think government cannot make a policy to constrain people leaving. So
Absolutely.
that is in a way undemocratic, and also in a globalized world it is unimaginable as well, because there are lucrative opportunities abroad for most of the skilled people and professionals. So that is why they are searching for these greener pastures. But on the other hand, the conditions here are not at all conducive now, as our gentlemen highlighted, for example, political stability. So that this really matters for the middle classes who actually would love for a peaceful life without hassle, any problems. Maybe we had enough problem for the last couple of years, and people were fed up. Those who could afford, they have left already the country. And those who are trying to leave, I think, are the other people, because they are also fed up and they are tired, and maybe, but they cannot afford to leave. Right now, what we find from statistics, so there are people who would who are not able to get a loan to fund their journeys right now, right?
But like specifically looking at the academic sphere now, most of the academics who go abroad for their PhDs, they actually switch disciplines sometimes. Like someone studying psychology might switch to something like anthropology, which is not, I would say, that explode in Sri Lanka. So in terms of the university system, let's start there. Is the government doing enough to accommodate these areas of expertise when they return?
That depends on actually the government's policy on education. Now, if you look at the state education system, so it is really underfunded. Now, for the last couple of years, the government allocations are really meager. So, for example, there is no capital grant at all for many universities. Now, for example, the Open University of Sri Lanka is not getting any capital grant. So, it totally depends on what it gets from the students actually. So, so the government seems to be really poor. That it complains that there is no income. That is why it imposes a huge tax on academics as well as other professionals. So that also discourage people to remain in this system, and those who go for PhDs, etc., sometimes they may not return, and also those who are highly expert in various fields of study, so they are leaving. They are easily leaving, and they are earning various positions post there abroad. So the problem is our education system is at the moment is facing a huge crisis, because the state system cannot be further, it can't afford to actually survive without real support from the state. So, but the state is at the moment not able to support the state education. So that is why it is bringing various committee reports, etc., and trying to forge a sort of idea that there should be acute restructuring in the system.
So Dr. Bilesha, if you look at the numbers in terms of work of remittances to Sri Lanka, before the bankruptcy was announced, how much was the highest work remittances number averagely per month was?
I think it ranged about 5, maybe close to 500 million, maybe. I'm not very sure about the statistics, but it dipped significantly as we know. So now it's recovering.
Yeah. So we saw last year, according to Foreign Employment Bureau data, 300,000 Sri Lankans went overseas for permanent employment in other countries. So we expected the numbers to rise in 2023. It did not happen that way, because we saw the numbers ranging at around 279 million and going up to 569 million, which was the highest in 2023 in March. And then it came down again. Usually March is the month you see a lot of work remittances come into the country because of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year. So isn't this a concern? Isn't numbers coming down a concern? Even though Sri Lankans have migrated largely, it seems that Sri Lankans have migrated, have gone with their families, and they are not sending back the money. Is that a development that we see?
That is one part of the story.
Okay.
Some of them have gone with their families, and there is no family left behind to send remittances. But some families are back, and they are sending remittances, but it's not recorded. So it might be
comes to illegal channels.
Yes, informal channels.
But if you look at the exchange rate against the US dollar against the rupee, it's now stabilized somewhat. If it's at the banks at 321, which was today, in the black market it was only 2 rupees more.
It is not only because of the exchange rate difference that they send. Sometimes it's the convenience. Sometimes you don't have the papers to go and remit formally.
Right.
So there are various reasons that they will resort to informal remittances.
Right. So I have a question for Dr. Tenuan. Professionals leaving in Sri Lanka is not due to salary. The huge difference in salary in Sri Lanka and other countries has been in existence inherently. What is the reason behind people actually leaving the country?
Actually, the reason for this leaving is multifactorial. As I told you earlier, salary is one factor. If you talk about the financial aspect, salary, tax, and the allowances that are given for transportation is mainly a factor. They are the main reasons. But apart from this salary, there are some other factors like living conditions and working environment. So if you look at the quarters and the accommodation that are given for doctors in peripheries, if you go and see them, you will be surprised how these people are working in such an accommodation, how they go and stay there, how they keep their families there. So that is one main reason. And if you talk about the schooling of these doctors, some doctors, the family lies in Colombo and they are working in Trincomalee or Anuradhapura. And they are coming back home every weekend. So they can't take their family to Anuradhapura because they don't have a proper school for their children.
Right.
But even if people are returning from overseas after foreign training, after 1 year or 2 years foreign training time, once they come back to Sri Lanka, there is no proper schooling system for the doctors. So they have to rely on the private sector schools or international schools or somewhere else. So this is one factor that government can do very quickly.
So I'm getting a lot of questions, Dr. Thinuan. It's all directed at you, unfortunately, at the moment. Is it fair for a doctor who got university admission on district quota or backward area quota to let down the country and leave? They deprive the chance of a merit student.
The thing is, Shamil, that once a doctor is selected to a government medical college and they do their work for 6-7 years there, and once they pass out from the government medical college, they get into an internship period where they work for 365 days, 4 hours per day, every day, like on calls. And whatever the money that has been spent on him will be recovered in that period, because they have been paid only 68 rupees per day for that 1 year internship period. And the people are talking about the amount of money that doctor is invested on a doctor, but that same money was invested on everyone in the community. But the doctors are the people who have gained the maximum results of them. They are the one who has taken the maximum from that money that he invested, and they have become the specialist or a doctor and serving in this country. So if someone is telling that the merit of the chance of another person has been gone away because of this one, the responsibility should lie with the government.
And Dr. Thinuan, I just want to clarify this fact. Since I come from a family of doctors, there is this saying that doctors here enjoy not exactly financial but other privileges, being in Sri Lanka, being in a doctor in terms of status and other opportunities. So it is harder for them when they travel abroad, although they get a better pay, they have to work twice as hard. Is this true? Is this an actual fact? What are your opinions?
Truly speaking, this is not an actual fact. So when you are in a society like in Sri Lanka, when you go to some place or when you are going to do some work from some place, being a doctor may give you a privilege. But when you talk about your families, when you're talking about the future of your kids, and when you're talking about the working environment and how you feel when you are working there, and the gratitude, the dignity that you are having in the service is such difference. Because I have been in UK for about 2 months, about 6 months back. I just saw the working environment there. It was severely, there are severe disparity between Sri Lanka and there.
So I want to ask you a question, Dr. Thinuan. Now, you've come on this show a couple of times. I've had you. We've discussed about many issues plaguing the health sector in Sri Lanka, and also the crises that has arisen because of that. What is keeping you in Sri Lanka?
There are many factors. If I tell you the small amount of numbers to give you a good insight, there are about 5,000 doctors at the moment who has gained foreign qualifications and foreign license and who are still waiting in country. About 5,000. That is about 1/4 of the total doctors community in Sri Lanka.
So those who have not passed the @16 exam?
No. They have gained qualification from Sri Lanka. They have registered in the SLMC, and apart from that, they have got qualification from abroad also.
If they want, they could leave.
They could leave at any moment. They have taken the PLAB exam, they have taken the AMC exam, they have done the prometric exam. There are 5,000 in number.
5,000?
5,000. So peer data says that is 5,000. So at any moment they can leave. So they may be staying for some family commitment, they may be looking after their parents, they may be waiting for their house to be sold out, something like that. But what will happen is, if this migration, this loss of doctors continue for another 3 months, the workload that comes to the people who are remaining here, they will get exhausted.
Right. So I want to ask all four of you a generic question as to what are the causes of brain drain in a generalistic point of view. Let me start off with Dr. Bilesha. In your opinion, Dr. Bilesha, what are the causes of brain drain in any country?
It is the aspiration. Number one is the aspiration, like it was mentioned just now, because they see how it is to work, the working conditions in another country, how the lifestyle is in another country. And then we also have to understand that migrants are a very selected group. Not everybody wants to or can become a migrant. So you have to be self-motivated, determined. So when it comes to that group of selected people, they have a drive. They can succeed anywhere, and they choose to go overseas because they know that they can make it better. They can reach their objectives over there, and they aspire to be better than what they are today. So that selectiveness makes them drive for more things, whereas the other people who do not desire to become migrants don't have such strong aspirations, and they kind of become complacent with what they have. So that is the fundamental thing, that aspiration and that self-selected nature of migrants.
Right. Dr. Athusri, what are your thoughts? What are the causes?
Because I'm not an expert on migration studies, but anyway, I think looking at the historical reasons from 80s onwards, I think it is some sort of fear which everybody, maybe for professionals as well as those who faced ethnic violence, etc. So they left and they are leaving the country because of some fear of insecurity, of their children's future and of their current existence, etc. So there is a growing fear among populations, particularly in the middle classes, and they would feel that they should leave the country, otherwise there is no future for them. So I think fear may be the broadest or largest factor which may cause migration.
Right. What about you, Dr. Thenwan?
Yeah, what I feel is the main reason for migration is the uncertainty. As explained by the other members of the panel, the uncertainty that prevails in the country. You know that even if someone have money, if there is no eggs to buy at the shops, there is a problem about feeding their kids. And if petrol is not available in the shed, although you have money in the bank account, the people are having problem. So this uncertainty that prevails in the last few months, maybe years, that is the main reason that people are migrating.
So you're saying the sudden surge in migration is because of
uncertainty. Yeah, this uncertainty is in different aspects,
right,
like economic, like social, maybe professional, maybe future of their kids, all these things. But the main reason is the uncertainty, because you know that doctors were paid the same amount earlier also, but they didn't go abroad like this.
Right. Dhanushka.
So basically, I think there are 4 factors that are affecting on a wider spectrum of things: political, economical, cultural, and social. So all these little problems would ideally boil down to any of these 4 major areas. See, if you take the political atmosphere and the political situation in the country, a lot of people after the war, they had hope. They thought that there will be political stability. We had hope in 2015, then we had in during the last presidential election. So hope and emotions played a key role in retaining talent in Sri Lanka. They as doctor said, the aspirations, people's emotions, we are a highly emotional nation, island nation. So people they always wish that tomorrow can be better than today. So they had that hope. But unfortunately, that was all drilled down due to the political uncertainty that we all encountered, which led to the economical crisis that we are experiencing at the moment. So people who had hope, people who had aspirations, obviously couldn't rely on the economical structure that the country's, the cost of living, not being able to buy things, not being able to afford a living here in Sri Lanka, not being able to afford the basic needs, food, shelter. So that all contributed towards that. Then there's another factor, the cultural factor. I think that also we need to really look into. Do we have a society that's open and that's liberal enough for the younger generation to sort of have that hope? Because they compare Sri Lanka with a lot of other countries, where by nature they encourage people to be open, people to be liberal, people to be innovative. So but we don't encourage any of these values amongst our younger generation. So they see hope in other countries. People come from different backgrounds, and I think due to a lot of the issues that has been coming up due to politics, nationalism, things like that has also played a role for a certain segment of the population to go away from Sri Lanka, even though their political or economical outset might be different. So culture has played a big role, and then the social factors, peer pressure affecting them, and then their neighbors leaving, so they are following the herd effect. So I think it's multifaceted event of things that has contributed.
Thank you, gentlemen, and the lady, for her thoughts with regard to what the causes of brain drain is. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, we are discussing with our panelists today on the effects of brain drain in Sri Lanka. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
Life is a collection of moments when you're burnt out and you've reached your limit. When you're hurt and everything brings you down. When you're happy and nothing can bring you down. Life is a collection of moments. Jones Gold Blend Tea. For life's every moment.
Last power plant in the southern direction is Samanalawa power plant. Therefore, if this power plant is not in operation, then maintaining the system voltage and other parameters of the network is very, very difficult.
Right. Parliament having majority Sinhalese dealing with regard to every matter with regard to the north and east. That had been our problem as far as the political problem is concerned.
Kill time. And our crop, 30 billion crop will be wasted, 30,000 families will be wasted and will be affected. And you can see multiple questions at a time, countries, economies having the deepest trouble in our history.
They say the inflation is down. No, the inflation is not down. Inflation has been contracted. It has been forcibly suppressed.
Do you think if you have the elections tomorrow, all your problems which you are talking about will be solved? Could be solved overnight? No. You can't do that way. We need stability.
There are no properly elected members for the provincial councils to devolve power. How can someone devolve power without having properly elected members for the provincial council?
Newsline, Monday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV1.
ගම්බැද්ද කඩිනම් ව්‍යාපෘති මාලාවෙන් සිදු කළ ව්‍යාපෘති වලින් කිහිපයක්. ගෙහියෝවිට පාලම විවෘත කිරීම. පෙරාදෙණිය ශික්ෂණ රෝහලේ වාට්ටුවක් පිළිසකර කිරීම. මහා කරඹෑව පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය විවෘත කිරීම. මයංගනය පාලමක් විවෘත කිරීම. පළුපිටිය පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය විවෘත කිරීම.
ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර.
Life is a collection of moments when you're burnt out and you've reached your limit. When you're hurt and everything brings you down. When you're happy and nothing can bring you down. Life is a collection of moments. Jones Gold Blend Tea. For life's every moment.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We are getting a lot of questions today on Face the Nation with regard to our topic tonight: effects of brain drain. So let's talk about the taxation, Dr. Tenuwan. I must tell you, I must admit, I too consult a particular doctor at a private hospital in Colombo, and this doctor in question takes a consultancy fee in cash up to the tune of 7,500 rupees or 10,000 rupees per session. So this is not taxable. Don't you agree that there are certain section of doctors who are being not taxed and they are reaping the benefit in Sri Lanka, buying houses, buying cars, and not declaring their taxes? If you go to an outside country, these consultants, which probably would be 1/4 of the complete number of consultants in Sri Lanka, which is around 2,900 or so, they won't be able to play this game.
So when you look at a problem, Shamil, you have to look at the whole picture. So if you look at the 2,799 cadre in Sri Lanka, how many consultants? 2,900. In position is 2,148. That is the total cadre. Out of that, 2,148 is the number that in position. Out of that, 272 have already migrated. And what I am talking is how many of these doctors, the fraction, the percentage of the doctors who collect that amount of money, and how many are just working in peripheries just for the government salary of 280,000. And if you think about only that doctor who charged the 7,500, 10,000 from a person per session, if you focus on that doctor and look at the solution of this problem, that is not going to work. So we have to look at the whole picture.
But let's talk about professionals.
Yeah, what I'm telling. Yeah.
Let's leave the doctors aside. How many lawyers are there?
That's what I'm going to tell. The doctors are the people who are doing this thing in the minimum level. So if you look at the other professions, they don't issue even a receipt. They don't issue any acknowledgement of their payment. If you know as an example, if you know the legal fees of certain renowned lawyers in the country, you know that they don't issue any receipt. They are not taxed at all. But
Dr. Tenwan, the GMO is the beacon of hope of all professionals, no?
That's true.
You all have how much of things you all have done.
So
when there was fertilizer issues, one of your GMO past presidents said,
There is very common topic of fertilizer.
But we have to talk about program, and we used to do all 3 times we've spoken about this. So you all are the beacon of hope for all the professionals in Sri Lanka, no?
So if you talk about
don't just isolate the lawyers alone and then say
I'm not
don't do cherry picking.
I'm not isolating anyone. I'm just telling is that if any professional is doing something that is out of the law, that is wrong. But the responsibility should lie with the government and the IRD who is collecting taxes. They should have ways to collect the taxes. If someone is telling this one is charging 10,000 rupees and he is evading taxation, the problem is not with that person only.
It's with the government.
It is with the government and the authority that collects the taxes. And he was talking about this fertilizer issue time to time and few times now. So if you are keep talking about this issue every time we meet again, so I have to tell you the same answer.
We will talk about this topic until eternity.
That's true. I am happy.
What Sri Lanka went through the last 2 years, one of the reasons is Dr. Then this fertilizer crisis.
So it is not. It is
now
not
where are these heroes? Tell me, tell me where are these heroes? Nowhere.
GMO. Why people?
He will also migrate.
No, he is not going to migrate.
Sure.
So why the government?
Probably he is among that 1/4.
Which 1/4?
1/4 who are the minority, the niche, who gets evaded by tax.
No. You can find out because you are the one who told about 7,000, 5,000 and 10,000 thing.
I said something that happened to me. I said something that happened to me.
Place and find out how much he is charging with his tax.
On that point, since you're talking about the tax, Dr. Atulasi, the food has been very vocal in against this tax policy from the very beginning. Do you have any facts in sense like numbers to show that this tax policy directly affected migration of professionals in the country? What are your views on that? Any opinions?
Yeah, actually, the professionals are hardly hit by this new tax structure now, because we are monthly paid people and our salaries are known to the government because it is given by the government, and so they reduce the tax and give us the rest. So what has happened right now are actually those who are highly indebted for various reasons, for housing, vehicles, etc. So actually they are getting minor salaries at the moment. For example, more than 5% of the academics are getting minor salaries. There are only about 5,500 academics remaining in the country right now, and already majority have left. Actually for the last couple of years, nearly 2,000 academics have left, particularly due to this tax issue, because for example a senior professor may be paying more than 1 lakh of rupees as tax, so that is a huge amount.
Dr. Let's take a country like Switzerland for an example. Do you know the tax rate?
Yeah, maybe now we have to think about various factors. Now here the cost of living and everything have increased, right? So in that context, for example, I have come from a faraway village to Colombo and I have settled here. I pay for everything, and so right now, I think why I don't leave, because I should leave for at least for some other minor job. Maybe I won't be able to become a lecturer in a foreign university, but at least I would be able to find a minor job, something like that, right?
Because if you look at it, a Sri Lankan sportswoman went as a housemaid to Dubai seeking for a job because she could not afford her mother's
That is exactly the case of those who are highly experts here. So maybe they leave for odd jobs abroad, right? So that is a very pathetic situation, and this has to be seriously addressed, because it is mainly it is a problem of human capital, because we will face the consequences in time to come. Shortly, I think in the next couple of years, we will be facing the acute consequences of this brain drain if the government is not serious about it. Right now, you may be getting some money sent by them, etc. But as you told, some are not even sending money because the entire families have migrated right now. So, but remittances are short gains, right? But in the long run, we have to think about the nation, right? So nation matters.
But Dr. Bilesh, what do you have
matters.
to say about that statement that was made by Dr. Atulasiri? Remittances are short term, but we have to think about the nation as a whole, looking forward.
To a certain extent, I do agree with him, because becoming a remittance nation is not such a good, sustainable plan.
What is the extent that you don't agree with him?
Because we saw what happened during the early parts of 2022 and up to this point, when the remittances were going down. Sri Lanka was, in a dire situation because we couldn't sustain the economy. So we should not rely too much on migration and remittances. But as he said, the overall economic situation has to be understood. So we have made a huge human capital investment in these people. So we should understand and be very careful about how much we can let go, how much we should retain of this human capital investment, and not just retain. Sometimes it's just retaining with rules and regulations, but put them into good use. Give them productive jobs, make sure there are jobs that they get paid properly. That whole economic development has to come in so that they are self-motivated to stay and they get a good income out of staying back in the country, and it goes in a spiral.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you, now we look at this picture as a very grim picture, it's a very bleak scenario for Sri Lanka, but something that we see a trend of is specifically with entrepreneurship and new companies coming up. We see a lot of people going abroad, working for especially tech companies, acquiring skills, coming here and starting startups. And we've seen several companies that are doing quite well. So do you think this trend would continue, and what is the status of it? What are your opinions on that?
Well, I think I earlier mentioned the fact that there are two things, right? One thing is if you want to start something here locally, what's the environment? Is it conducive enough? The whole macro factor as well as the micro factor, like from registering a company to attracting talent and selling your solutions either locally or abroad.
Just before you get into that, very simply, is it actually easy to start a business in Sri Lanka? Personally, what do you think?
Well, it's easy to start, but is it easy to continue? That's a problem.
Right.
In that way, see, there are two sides of the coin, right? When you say easy, okay, in terms of competition, whether it's easy or whether in terms of
let's say the red tape, the bureaucracy, the government support.
Well, starting a small scale business, it's not that difficult. It's a matter of registering your organization, opening up a bank account, and then going through and getting it started. But the problem arises in attracting talent and then opening up market opportunities. That's pretty tough.
Right.
Because the local environment, like our market size is.
So do you think if we make it more conducive, we could attract investors into Sri Lanka, especially Sri Lankans who've gone abroad, acquired skills and are willing to come back and start here?
That's actually what we should be doing. because it's a personal choice whether you decide to stay here or go abroad. We can't really influence another person to stay here just because we want them to stay here. It's a personal choice. But if we create an environment that's conducive enough for someone to go abroad, work for 5 years and come back and contribute towards our economy, that's what a lot of other countries do. Like a lot of foreign countries, they encourage people to. That's what China did. That helped them in terms of, you know.
So just to get some clarity, I posed a question from Dr. Bilesha earlier on, asking her and posing this question about the cream of the educated people are leaving the country, and we are now facing a big problem as corporates even trying to hire good people. I think you also as an individual and an entrepreneur would face this problem. Do you agree? Because Dr. Bilesha says that we should change the narrative and look forward beyond that point. But are we not left with the end of the cake? You know, we don't have the cherries and the cream anymore.
Well, I mean, 4 of us are here, so I mean, someone is sort of remain to voice out like the concerns of their respective industries. I mean, see, it's again, I would say about 60, 70%.
Vishal and I,
yes, including the two of you all and like many others. So it's like people still, I mean, irrespective of the greener pastures, I think some people still opt to remain here in Sri Lanka. And for me, it's like a personal choice. I opt in to stay here and then sort of contribute something back to our economy. And then that's kind of what motivated me. And there are a lot of people who think the same way. I think even the doctors, like a lot of professionals. So we address it to doctors, but I think there are a lot of engineers, there are a lot of other professionals, IT professionals who opt to stay here in Sri Lanka irrespective of the opportunities that they get abroad. But that percentage is very small.
And Dhanushka, you couldn't answer my previous question. I was asking, like, is there a trend in people coming back and starting businesses?
There was a trend. There was a trend. There was
not anymore.
I don't see that. There was a massive trend prior to the presidential election and leading up to the presidential election and just 1 year after that. Just like the times when the war ended. Startup communities, a lot of people, opening up small shops, IT professionals, they wanted to, be part of the economic growth and the boom that Sri Lanka offered.
So you're saying the political situation directly affected their willingness to come?
Political situation directly affected. That's what we see when we talk to these people, because they don't see the political environment getting stable in the near future. And they don't have hope. Obviously, they don't have hope in the current lot of politicians. A lot of people you talk to, they don't have, you take the age limits or like the age brackets of the entrepreneurs or the startup, they generally fall between 20 to 40. Majority of them are between that age bracket. So they want people to sort of put down policies in line with what their aspirations are to a great extent, and they need people to voice that out in the parliament for people to make laws. But I don't see that happening. And then
Dr. Bilesha, do you think that politics has played a role in brain drain in Sri Lanka?
I think that's where it all started, if I am allowed to say so, because why did the Aragalaya start? Why did all of this economic crisis, even before the Aragalaya, why did we have foreign exchange reserves going down? Because we didn't have proper political guidance and leadership to address the issue when we saw it very early to avert this situation. So many people are finding difficult to live now with this inflation and lack of services. People are scared to go to a hospital because they don't have trust in the medicine that is available or who will be administering that medication to them. So largely people are kind of very concerned about what are the services provided in the country, going back to the leadership that was in the country that couldn't ensure that the proper services are provided. So people are kind of considering, if I go overseas, I will get better services, I will get a better job.
But do we see, Dr. Bilesha, because I know IPS does an annual review book that speaks about the country's economy in the quarters, in the 4 quarters that we are talking about. Do you see a reverse in this trend politically and economically with the current leadership in the country?
I'm not a political economist to be able to answer that, but my personal view is there is some sort of positive thinking with the little bit of stability that came along with the IMF deal, but beyond that I don't think there is much concern.
Dr. Bilesha, also I'd like to draw actually everyone's attention. Now we are talking about brain drain in terms of skilled migration, but in a very technical sense we should also talk about the many number of students who are abroad looking for studies and they mostly don't come back, and this is a potential skill that Sri Lanka could have had. So is this being taken into consideration when we talk about brain drain in terms of like the numbers, the statistics? How do we measure that?
That is the saddest story. We don't have good statistics about who's going, where are they going, what is the number even, because right now there is no way of recording it. There are few different mechanisms at the airport maybe or immigration card, but then very few people would really enter the exact reason that they are leaving the country. And then there are other places where you might go and get your certifications, credentials certified by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or someplace. You might get a little bit of numbers there, but there is no proper record of
it's very sketchy.
Whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate level, or whether it's high school level students who are leaving, and that is the future human capital of Sri Lanka.
You see, that is actually more alarming than the statistics of the skilled migration.
Yes,
because
very
we're losing
much.
a lot of potential.
Very much. And then this very young students, when they go, they are most likely not going to come back. If a person who has grown up and entered adulthood, there is a little bit of more chance of coming back because he might have a family and maybe might be married or have some connection, greater connection back to the Sri Lankan economy, that he needs to come back. But when he becomes a student, they're very free and they just want to explore. And
so Dr. Athurasiri, you are also a senior lecturer at the university. What do you tell your students to motivate them to stay in Sri Lanka?
Actually, I mostly ask them to learn English and IT and leave the country. That is what I mostly do in my lectures, because I don't see, bright future in near time, right? So I'm very much sure that this country is not going to improve in the coming decades, or maybe 2 or 3 decades time, because if this political class is not understanding what these people are demanding, because Aragalaya was a very good instance in the entire history of post-independence history of Sri Lanka, where this corrupt political class was challenged in their pace, right? So that is the first time in the post-independence history that people took power into their hands, but in a non-violent struggle. So that struggle was so successful, but ultimately somehow this elite political class have now manipulated the conditions in their favor, and now they are putting so much of constraints in the system. So the political system is right now getting highly de-democratized, and there is huge concentration of power in one man. Right?
Just very quickly, Dr. Athurasiri, do you think the present leadership gives confidence to the people?
Present leadership gives many things to people. One thing is that he is right now sort of taking away our freedom and our liberty and democracy. Everything is now constrained. So those are the things that he is giving to the people, and he is giving more and more fear to the people, and that may also cause people to leave, because there is no real freedom in Sri Lanka right now, because what people expected was freedom from that dictatorial type of government, but right now we have arrived at a situation there is more dictatorship and more authoritarianism. So right now the system is growing, into a very bad system. So
Yeah,
I
Dr.
think
Atulus,
this
yeah.
will cause more migration.
Excuse me, just one question to pose.
I'm getting a lot of questions from our viewers. I need to try to accommodate them as much as possible. I'm going to give you an opportunity, sir.
Okay.
Just give me a second. Dr. Bilesh, one of our viewers who are watching the show tonight has messaged and said, I spent 3 weeks in Europe and can't wait to come back to Sri Lanka. So there are people who wants to come back as well, Dr. Atulus and Dr. Bilesh.
Looks like he went on a holiday, right?
Excuse me?
Looks like he went on a holiday, right?
Looks like he went on a holiday, yeah.
So then you want to come back. They're not talking about that side of migration. That is tourism.
Yeah.
But if he went for a job and after 3 weeks he wants to come back, that's a different story. Maybe he was not prepared, didn't mentally prepare for the change, the cultural change, what he was getting into. So that is all part of migration. You have to understand what you're taking up, what you're leaving behind, because many people get into this emotional conflict once they leave, and then they start feeling nostalgic about.
But I know a lot of people who have left the Middle East seeking job opportunities. They stay in countries like Dubai, Qatar, and Bahrain for a few weeks, and they want to return back to the country. So you have a section who are like that as well. That's what I told Dhanushka before. Everything is not hunky-dory when you go overseas. There is a negative aspect to that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that is true. I think from the stories that we get from our friends who have left the country already, so the life abroad is not that easy. So once you migrated, so you will not find good opportunities easily. But however much the situation may be difficult abroad, so these people are brave enough to leave the country and undergo all those difficulties for a better future that they think will someday will come.
Right. So when I posed a question to you all earlier with regard to the causes of brain drain, Dr. Bilesh spoke about aspirations is one of the reasons. Dr. Atulus spoke about the fear that is prevalent. Dr. Thenuan spoke about the uncertainty, and Dhanushka spoke about 4 factors: economy, hope, and the cultural differences, as well as social and political differences as well. My next question to you is going to be, what are the consequences of brain drain for a country like Sri Lanka right now at this very crucial juncture? Let's start off with Dr. Bilesh.
So right now, we are having shortages in many sectors, as I said before. As our colleague from the medical field has already mentioned, we have a shortage of consultants. And then we know certain IT companies are facing difficulties, and then the construction sector is facing difficulties. So this is the immediate issue of not having sufficient pool of labor to cater to the Sri Lankan labor demand. But then beyond this immediate need, we also have the medium-term issue. Now, going down the road, we might not have enough sufficient good teachers to do the human capital development in the country, the trainers in the training skills development sector. And then we will have a future shortage also, which might be much broader than what we are going through right now. And then when we don't have the sufficient human capital in the country, we will have issues in attracting investment into the country. And then again, all the other issues of confidence, whether we will be able to retain the skills, whether we will have the infrastructure that is required for the future development of the country. It will all be hampered if we don't have the proper human capital now and in the medium term. So there are many levels of consequences of it.
Right. Dr. Alastri?
Yeah, from a political perspective, I think migration largely affect democracy of a country. Now, for example, Sri Lanka is a democratic country, democratic political system. But when you look at the people, the quality of the people who leave the country, actually they are the most able people in the system. They are highly educated, specialized, and they have a voice in society. But all of a sudden, they make a decision to leave. So that will affect the quality of democracy in Sri Lanka in future, and right now that's happening because after Aragalaya, most of those who involved in the Aragalaya also left. They left because of fear of being arrested, and likewise because of the fear of economic insecurity, fear of various other reasons, and for the aspirations of a better life, these highly skilled, educated people are leaving, and the system is left with those who are not able to live with, right? Those who cannot afford to fund their journey, etc.
Yeah, because leaving the country on a migration journey is very costly.
Very costly.
If you look at a country like Australia, the minimum cost required to get an immigration visa is approximately 4.5 million.
But those countries benefit from our highly skilled labor, right? Our experts. So they are benefiting out of the poor countries' human capital, whereas we will be facing the huge shortage, as Dr. Samaratna Veeratna said. We will be facing shortages in every sector. In education right now we are facing a shortage of lecturers in the education system. We need to recruit 6,000 or more lecturers, but we don't have, the government doesn't have money for that. And on the other hand, doctors are leaving, engineers are leaving, IT specialists are leaving, software engineers are leaving, so all are leaving. So we make them by spending people's tax money, and we create them, but after all, after we produce the product, so they leave the country. So this is the pathetic situation right now we are facing.
What about Dr. Tenwan?
Yeah, I think that we have three main issues concerning the health sector. One is that we are losing doctors to other countries, so the peripheral setting of the Sri Lankan healthcare system is getting collapsed, because when the people are leaving from the country, maybe a consultant, when that specialty is not available in Colombo, what will happen is people will get transferred from periphery to Colombo. So ultimately the peripheral setting will be, peripheral rural community will be get affected. On the other hand, what will happen is so that the Hambantota anesthetist incident, when the Hambantota anesthetist left the country without informing this procedure, someone else had to cover up that place. So maybe the Tangala anesthetist has to cover up now Hambantota and Tangala both. So that same person is getting exhausted day by day.
Dr. Just to clarify now, is it true that the emergency services sector of the health industry is seriously suffering because of the brain drain issue?
Yeah, that is what I'm going to tell. There were 30 emergency physicians recently we trained, and we started emergency treatment units throughout the country from these 30 emergency physicians. Out of these 30 physicians, emergency physicians, the 24 has already gone now. So we had to shut down those emergency treatment units in peripheral settings. Only 6 are left. I will tell you another figure, that our vice president, the president of the College of Pulmonologists, recently revealed that he got an email from a foreign country demanding 30 Sri Lankan pulmonary physicians, chest physicians. They are specifically requesting Sri Lankan doctors. That is due to the high medical education and good standard of practice that they are maintaining here. So that is the demand that they are having here. So number 3 factor is the people who are migrating from Sri Lanka are the doctors who are training medical students. The professorial units are the ones that they are teaching the students. So when these lecturers are leaving the country, the medical doctor consultants, the people who are training the doctors, so medical education will be in a problem in coming years. So who is there to teach the doctors? Some people are talking about increasing the production. So there will be any solution for this problem until they make a pause.
Right. So I'm getting a lot of questions. So I'm just going to stop the thought process with regard to the consequences of brain drain there and move to Dhanushka with regard to a question that was posed. I'm getting a lot of questions today from our viewers, good and bad. The worst thing that is happening in Sri Lanka is people leaving. But then again, just imagine if the Middle East was not there, where will we be today? Isn't the answer that Sri Lanka is a failed state?
Actually, that's a very good question. See, what it all leads to, that's something I think we need to really discuss. What drives the nation it's people. So when people leave a country, it obviously affects the nation as a whole. See, I like to just talk a little about that. As a nation, what do we really stand for? If you take countries like Germany, if you take countries like Japan, after the Second World War, like countries developed and they have a brand, they have a, I mean, when you say Germany, when you say Japan, even when you say China, it stands for something. Then you roll back to Sri Lanka and see what do we really stand for. Unfortunately, apart from tea, gem, tea, rubber, there's nothing much that we really stand for.
Tourism spot.
So that it all comes back to, do we have enough people, enough brains left in the country to be innovative enough and compete globally as a nation? So that these are very serious problems that we are going to face, we are already facing, and then in the next 10 years, I think this is going to be huge. Due to that, we don't see investments coming to Sri Lanka because they don't have confidence in, overall as a country, they don't have confidence, and they don't have confidence in the sort of human capital that we can give. A lot of investors are not running due to the political instability only. They are running away because they don't have the right type of talent left here in Sri Lanka. We don't have the right type of environment to operate, the right type of rules and regulations. There's bribery, there's corruption. So that's what we stand for as a nation. Right. When it comes to competing globally, when you talk about Middle East was nothing, like 20, 30 years back. But the vision of a particular leader that drove that nation to be what it is at the moment. So we don't have that sort of leadership, neither we have the sort of people to back up the leadership. It boils down to the people as well. We all have a part to play at the end of the day. Even the people who are remaining needs to look at things at a global perspective. We have to compete globally, not locally. So we need people, we need to retain that talent.
So I want to ask Dr. Bilesha, what do we do to address these challenges that have caused brain drain? What is the way forward?
It's not an easy solution. It is a cocktail of policy solutions. Number one, right now, we need to identify what are the shortage sectors. I don't think we are doing a proper examination of that, and we have hearsay knowledge from industry people of the specific sectors, but we have to have a proper evidence-based understanding of what are the sectors that has a labor shortage, and then have some mechanism where we ensure that we have sufficient workers to ensure that these sectors can survive and push the country's recovery process and release the others. And then that is the first step. But then beyond that, we have to also kind of do some skills development, and that is in the sense that understand that there is a segment of people who want to migrate. We cannot stop that. As it was told, it's a personal decision, and people have a right to go wherever they want, provided they get the visa or whatever.
Right.
So support them in that, and then also support the others who might not make that decision to be part of the productive human capital pool in the country. So these are long-term plans that we have to have understanding of the current labor shortages, and also have an understanding about the future sectors that we need, and plan accordingly and train them.
Right. Dr. Adusari, what is the way forward for Sri Lanka?
Yeah, well, for any country, the way forward is to, make the system better for the people. So for that, the political system should stand for always. But unfortunately, in our country, we don't see that much. There is a serious lack of commitment in the political class to refine this system, and they don't understand actually the agonies that we are going through as a country, because those who are in power and those who have been now those who have now become the political class in the country, so they would not like to lose their power. So that is why I said at some instant, the regime in the power is now putting up so much of constraint to prevent these youth and those who aspire to get into politics.
Is there any political party in Sri Lanka who can take us out of this rut?
It depends actually. It doesn't depend much on political parties, but
there's no
the
one,
people, right? But people have to be allowed to speak their voice.
There has to be a phoenix who rise from the ashes. So there's no political party right now.
People have to have freedom to speak what they want to speak. So then only the system, they will be able to sort of find a system for them. If the people are not free enough to talk for themselves, and somebody is always trying to represent and put constraint on them, so that is not going to correct the system.
My question is, do you see any political party who can take us out of this rut?
No, it is not a question about a political party, but largely about the people.
But don't you think all these political parties they have petty agendas?
Yeah, political parties have petty agendas. There is no, I think, question about that. So that is part of the nature of politics as well. But right now we have to understand, if we really want to correct the system, we have to let the people to sort of overturn the system, right? So, but that is not being allowed. So there are serious now restraint on the freedom of people and on democracy. So unless and until we really let this democracy talk in this country, so unless and until we find that real democracy in the country, we will be able to change the system.
But I'm glad, Dr. Athulsiri, you are saying that political parties have petty agendas in the country. That's a very important remark.
I didn't sort of deny what you said, because every party can have a petty agenda, but there may be good people here and there, so they may be having. But the system, after all, is corrupt right now. So we need to sort of have a better system.
I'm not going to ask you, Dr. Athulsiri, who are these good people?
I don't know actually.
Right, Dr. Denwan, what's the way forward?
Yeah, when thinking about this problem, some people think that we can increase the production of skilled professions and overcome this problem. But as far as I am thinking about, we have to make a pause to this drain. Otherwise, we can't. Maybe we can't get back the people who have already left. But at least we have to think about the people who are about to leave. So we have to keep them at least here. We have to try to retain them as much as possible. So one aspect here is we have to think about strengthening them financially. I'm talking about the medical profession. So we have to think about allowing and paying them a market value salary. That
What is your number when you say market based salary? What is the number that the GMO has in mind?
So we have foreseen this problem, and we have given set of proposals even maybe 2-3 months back, telling that if you don't provide a conducive environment for the doctors to stay here, this problem will.
How much? Tell us.
So what we have done is we have done a survey comparing the values that we have been paid, the value that have been paid by the foreign countries, and the value that is paid by the private sector in Sri Lanka. So when we compare about all these things, the number that comes is at least a grade medical officer should be paid a salary of about 7.5 million. Sorry, 750,000. And a consultant should be paid at least twice of that, if you want to keep them retained in the country.
But this 750,000 is taxable?
Yes, it is taxable. After taxation, you know how much will come as the take-home salary. So 750,000 and double of that to a consultant. You know that the strain that his consultant is going through. Talk about the surgeon, talk about the VOG, talk about the oncologist, how much their personal life has been affected.
Right.
So number two is that we have to make that tax policy should be a professional friendly tax policy. You know that the tax policy that having in Sri Lanka is not professional friendly one. They have been taxed as a businessman. So it is the people are not going to, and people are not getting benefit of these taxes. If you talk about the European countries, they are getting, although they have been taxed about 50%, they are getting the benefit out of that. Number three is that we have to provide doctors a conducive working environment. That we have to provide them a proper accommodation. And we have to provide them, their children should be allowed to go to a good school. The schooling of the children is, the education is one prime concern of anyone in this country. And number three is that we have to think about the transportation of the doctors. So sometimes the doctor's family is here, and as I told you, the doctor is working in Jaffna. They have to come back home and go to the working place every weekend. So do you think by 250,000 to 80,000 that they can even afford for their transport, the petrol and the vehicle and the driver and all? On the third part, we have to make a very convincing environment within the Ministry of Health for where we doctors, we have to make a restructure in certain branch of the ministry so doctors can work in a good faith there.
Dr. Thanuan, just before, I feel like I need to pose this question to you now. We spoke about especially anesthetists and doctors in the emergency service leaving the country. So right now there's a very critical problem of fewer specialists remaining in the country. So do you think, in terms of the GMOA and you personally, build in a framework just as a temporary solution to keep them, because if they go, we have no one else to fill that position? Do you think it's a fair thing to do by the government and the Ministry of Health?
Let me tell you that if you allow them to leave in a proper way, they will go and come back at least.
Oh, okay.
So if you allow them to go on a leave, maybe 3 months, 6 months, whatever they were time period they request, they have a bond to come back. But if you are going to restrain, if you are going to put rules and keep them, they will go and they will never come back. So because even there is a bond or something to be paid,
it's not practical at all.
It's not practical to keep them by force. So what we have to do is we have to make a conducive environment for them to stay, and if they want to go and come back.
Right. Lanushka, what are your thoughts? What's the way forward for Sri Lanka?
So I think it all boils down to political stability, and I noted a few things based on the discussion. I think we have to sort of go back to basics. If we want to retain people, if we want to put an immediate stop to this, we have to look at ensuring that people's basic needs are met, starting from healthcare. The drugs are available, medicine is available, and the doctors are there to to treat people. Like, that's a basic need. Anyone who wants to stay here, he kind of want to look into that. Then number two, in terms of food, in terms of ensuring that basic essentials are there and it's accessible for people, and it's at a particular price so that people can afford to buy what they want to buy. You see, malnutrition is a big problem. I think that's not really relevant to the topic, but these are factors that are contributing towards the entire system at the end of the day, and we will see these problems coming. That's what I told. In the next 3 years probably we will see, because of malnutrition, the problems that we are going to face. That's going to impact the entire human card of the country. And then also ensuring government institutions functions properly. They run as smoothly as they can run, so that people don't get discouraged when they want to get their basic needs done. So ensuring that is, I think, is of essential need, and also forming national policies, solid policies for the next 5 years. So these are some of the key things if we want to put an immediate stop that we need to look into.
Just one more question, Shamir. When we talked about the professionals' experience with the tax policy, the taxes currently imposed on businesses, SMEs, do you think it's fair? Do you think it's
not at all? It's close to 30%. Not at all fair, right?
So would that be a factor contributing to brain drain as well?
Obviously, a lot of business owners. Not only that, the fact that they have a lot of import restrictions on a lot of raw materials that people couldn't function.
But now those are being relaxed.
Those are being relaxed little by little. But right now the other problem is the cost on freight, and then the dollar fluctuations impacting because the cost that you incur to import those raw materials, and you can't really sell the end product in the local market for that price.
Yeah. So I want to close today's discussion on a positive note, rather than being pessimistic about Sri Lanka. Let's try and look at what are the good sides, what is the bright side. There definitely is a light end of this tunnel. And how do we look at it? Is it a multifaceted approach involving reforms in education and job creation? Is that the way out for Sri Lanka? So I want to start off with Dr. Bilesha. Dr. Bilesha, tell us, what would be your message to the youth in Sri Lanka, including medical professionals who are now looking at migrating? Do you have a message for them?
It's hard to tell my message to them when we can't offer what they want in the country. So try to, even though somebody has to leave the country and decides to go overseas, my message would be try to stay connected back with Sri Lanka and contribute in whatever way. Due to altruism, you have parents, you have friends, and this is your country. Remember where you were raised. So on that basis, stay connected and contribute in whatever way. Try to come back if you can. If you cannot come back, supplement it with some sort of way to contribute to the Sri Lankan economy. But then again, other than that, I think one thing that we didn't touch in the discussion is that all the other countries are attracting our talent. That is why there is brain drain. That means they are welcoming immigrants. But Sri Lanka is still very protective, and we are not opening our doors, despite having shortages in many sectors, to welcome others, other professionals or the qualified people. So I'm not saying just open the doors, but I think it is time to revisit this and see what sort of mechanism, frameworks that we need in the country, because it's obvious that we cannot go on like this. We are going to have shortages. So just start reconsidering, not just open doors, reconsider it, have some mechanisms, frameworks to see how we can benefit from attracting talent beyond the Sri Lankan origin talent. And I'm saying that because we get some foreign students coming to Sri Lanka to study also. We train them and they also go overseas. Other countries, they keep Sri Lankan students who go overseas. They might give them internships or whatever, and there are mechanisms to retain. So we have to understand how to retain it. And even though I asked, my message to youth is to go overseas and try to stay connected, as the state, we also have to do some conscious efforts to stay connected with the youth and to make this attractive for them to stay connected with, and not just ask their help whenever we are in trouble.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bilisha Virata. I now move attention towards Dr. Atulsiri Samarkot, Secretary of FUTA.
Yeah, Samir, I think this discussion have drawn attention on many aspects of this crisis, because this is not just an economic crisis per se, so it is multi crisis of many nature, right? It's an overall crisis that we are facing. It is not just a dollar crisis, it is not just a crisis in getting remittances, etc., right? So it is a crisis in the entire system. So therefore, I see the major responsibility with the people. So it is up to the people to correct this system. So people to stand for the system, people to stand for their country, people to stand for largely their state, the nation, right? So that's why this citizenship role is very much important. So even though I very often ask my students to leave, just leave the country, don't stay here because you wouldn't have a future, but I'm not telling that willingly, because I tell that because I know I have no answers for their questions. But the real answer lies with all of us, with all of our power, because we have some power. We have power as citizens, power as the legitimate citizens of this country. So we should do our role properly, right? So that is the message. So do your role properly. So we may not be able to think of various perks, etc. So we have to undergo all these difficulties, but we have to stand for the rights of the people and their democracy, and that will ultimately lead this system to a better place.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Atulsiri. Dr. Thiruvan Wickramasinghe.
Yeah, I would like to highlight in three aspects. Best thing that happened to us with this problem is that we found out that where we are. That we found out that how much underpaid we are, how much under facilities that we have been offered. And number two is we found out that how much demand we have internationally. That is due to the quality education we have, maybe the free education and the skilled professions that we are having, and the best medical practice, the regulations that is having in Sri Lanka. All those things contribute. So we found out that there is a big demand for our skills. Number 3 is we found out that there are 5,000 people who have the qualifications to go abroad and practice but still stays in this country. That is the brightest thing that I can tell now. So we have to make ways to keep them retained. Maybe by making environment change, maybe by making the salary that is comfortable for them, and making their hopes to become reality, whatever the way. So government has to take, authorities has to take stern actions immediately. If they wait for another week, another set of people will be leaving the country. 600 doctors who are on training at the moment in foreign countries. And in the coming year, there are another 600 to be leave. So we don't know how much of them will come back. So now I heard that the ministry is telling 125 doctors who are due to return has already not come back. So we have to make ways to make things happen, so the people who are leaving the country to come back after their due period. And if we are trying to restrain them by putting laws, they will just leave the country without coming back. The other thing is that we have to think about the ways to keep these people who are about to leave. So otherwise what will happen is the remaining system will get collapsed. Ultimately the peripheral community will be affected, and consequence will come back to the center also, because when the same consultant has to work in few places, the care that he can give will be reduced. And number 3 is that when there is no people to teach people, there is another problem. So we have to address this fact in many ways in this context.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tenuwan. Anushka.
I think we need to drive hope and aspirations as a nation. If we fail to do that, we are going to lose heavily, in the long term. So that needs to obviously comes from the top, as well as citizens. I think, as Doctor also said, we all have a part to play. Unfortunately, we talk a lot, but when it comes to actions, a lot of people in our country fail. They don't take responsibility, neither they take accountability. Same as politicians. At least we should create a culture where we hold the politician accountable for the decisions that they take. At the same time, people should also be held accountable and they should take responsibility. So we need to drive that from bottom up. That's where I think anyone representing their industry has a responsibility to sort of drive that hope and that aspiration. Because if politicians and if lawmakers are not going to do that for us, at least we citizens should do that. That's what we saw from Maragalaya, that people have the power. And they had the power to change their leader. The same leader that the majority elected, they had the power to change. So people still have the power. Unfortunately, most of that people left because they didn't see hope. So we need to drive back hope in our country, and then ensure that the youngsters see that one way or the other. So that's one way of putting things right. And also we should look at building national brands, organizations, companies, businesses. Why I talk about that, Shamir, is a lot of countries, they have been with the big industries when they were in trouble. They represent something. We talk about Europe, they stand for something. I told earlier, like Germany, they stand for quality. Japan, they stand for quality. And internationally, it's an accepted norm when you encourage the made in label. Made in a particular country. If you talk about Sri Lanka, we don't have that stand. Made in Sri Lanka does not stand for something at the moment. So we should, look at reinventing our purpose as a nation and drive that from top to bottom. As an entrepreneur, as a businessman, that's something that I ardently believe, and something that the government should look at. And then we should look at that and talk about that at different forums, so that people have the hope and they have the vision to, sort of drive this forward, and hopefully, lessen the brain drain that we are having at the moment.
One final comment, Shamil.
Yes.
Media also has a very big response and very big role on this. Because when some incident happen in somewhere, rather than trying to attract the audience for that incident, if the media can give solutions and force the government, force the authorities to formulate solutions, to approach scientifically, I think media is the best place to do that.
Right. Thank you very much, gentleman and lady. Thank you very much, Dr. Bilesha Weerath, the Head of Migration and Urbanization Research at IPS. Looking forward for a report, Bilesha. When is it out?
Somewhere in October.
Somewhere in October. So I'm looking forward for that report. I've been reading that report since 2004, being a journalist.
Thank you.
It has contributed immensely to enhance our knowledge as journalists as well on the country's economy and the way forward. Thank you very much, Dr. Atul Samarkund, Secretary of the Federation of the University Teachers Association. Thank you very much, Dr. Tenuwan Wickramasinghe, a General Committee member of the GMOA. Dr. Tenuwan, time and time again, until we get out of this situation, we will talk about the fertilizer crisis, and there is a
saying that the great people talk about the concepts, and average people talk about the events, and small minds talk about the people.
I don't know what that meant, but I will tell you one thing. We as the media, you said the media has a role to play. We will keep reminding the people what has happened in the past, so that they can reflect of the future and take decisions accordingly. And there comes the role of the GMOA as well, how they have played their part of their role
in
Sri Lanka's history. Whether it's negative or positive, it's up to you. Thank you very much, Danushka Fernand, award-winning entrepreneur, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Disal, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Take care and good night.